Okay, so today we're diving deep into, well, you could say one of the heavier stories out there.
Oh, yeah,
It's the
Dutch.
story of Prophet Lot, peace be upon him.
Yeah.
And we're going to be working from a really fascinating source for this one, a transcript, actually, from a YouTube lecture by Dr. Othman Alchemies.
A lot to unpack there.
Yeah, a lot to unpack. And, we're going to get into some, well, some sensitive topics today, so listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it's good to remember right off the bat, I mean, what we're looking at here is it is a religious lecture.
Right,
It's one scholar's, particular way of looking at things.
Absolutely.
So yeah, just something to keep in mind as we go through all of this.
For sure. But that's kind of the fun of it, right?
Right.
We get to look at these ancient stories and see how they're understood and interpreted today.
Totally. Yeah, the different layers of meaning and relevance. It's fascinating.
Absolutely. And, as always, we're going to try to keep things, approachable, not get bogged down in too much, dense theological debate,
Right.
but really try to extract the essence of this story.
Yeah.
The key events, the problems Lot's community faced, Lot's response, and, well, yeah, the ultimate consequences.
Yeah, that's the heart of it, really.
Absolutely.
Mm.
So where do we even begin with this one? I mean, the story of Lot himself, where does it all start?
Well, the lecture really emphasizes just how important a figure Lot is. Even just looking at how many times he's mentioned in the Quran, like 27 times, that's a lot.
Wow. Yeah, that's not insignificant.
No, not at all. It shows you like how central he is to the Islamic tradition. And we
Yeah.
learn right away about his family ties, his connection to Abraham, who was his uncle.
Right, Prophet Abraham, peace be upon them both.
Peace be upon them both, yeah. And we're told they both journeyed from Iraq, which is, ancient Mesopotamia, towards the Levant, or what's also known as Sham.
Okay, so this is like a huge migration.
A huge migration, yeah. Leaving their homeland, heading towards this new land.
And this is where their paths sort of diverge, right?
Exactly, yeah. Abraham settled in Palestine, but Lot kept going, ended up in Sodom, which is in modern-day Jordan. And what's crucial here is that the lecture makes it very clear Lot wasn't just, passing through. He was a messenger of God, sent specifically to this community in Sodom.
Okay, so he's got a divine purpose in being there.
He's got a mission, absolutely.
So paint a picture for us. What kind of place was Sodom? What were its people like?
Well, to put it bluntly, the lecture describes them as having hit rock bottom, the height of foolishness and ignorance. That's how it's put. They were deep, deep into corruption, immoral behavior.
And no shame about it.
No shame, zero shame. They just embraced this lifestyle that was completely against what's considered decent.
And what exactly, what was the main issue here? What specific acts are we talking about?
The thing that the lecture really focuses on is their complete rejection of the natural way of things between men and women. Like, homosexual behavior wasn't just happening, it was the norm. The speaker actually uses the word anomaly to describe it, like it was deviant on a societal scale.
Wow, so this wasn't just a few individuals.
No, this was the whole community. Like, the lecture emphasizes that this kind of behavior is what leads to people disappearing, diseases spreading, entire societies getting corrupted and wiped out.
And there's that story, right? That quote from history.
Oh, yeah, about Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan. He was a caliph back in the Umayyad period. And he's supposed to have said that if it wasn't for the Quran mentioning it, he wouldn't believe that men actually do that with men. Like, it was just that unthinkable.
It just shows you, how far outside the norm this was.
Yeah, totally. It's like something that you just wouldn't even imagine unless it was specifically revealed, at least from that perspective.
Right. And the lecture doesn't shy away from directly connecting this to what the scriptures say.
Oh, no, not at all. It quotes verses from the Quran that say, Lot's people denied the messengers. And that's a big deal because the way it's explained is that rejecting even one messenger is like rejecting all of them. So when they rejected Lot, they were rejecting the whole chain of divine guidance.
They were rejecting the whole concept.
The whole foundation, yeah.
Okay, so we've got this backdrop of serious immorality and rejection of God. How does Lot, as this, divinely appointed messenger, how does he deal with this situation?
What's interesting is the lecture points out that Lot addresses his people as their brother.
Interesting.
Yeah, like he's emphasizing a shared humanity, a common ground. And from there, he reminds them, the basics: Be pious, obey God, and he makes it very clear, hey, I'm a trustworthy messenger. I'm not making this stuff up.
And he's not in it for personal gain, right?
No, not at all. He says his reward is with God.
Right.
And then he gets to the heart of the matter, you know. He directly calls them out on their main sin, approaching men instead of women. He says, you are a transgressing people, straight up.
Strong words.
No mincing words, no beating around the bush. He lays it out there.
So how did they take this? I'm guessing not well.
Oh, they were furious. They actually threatened to kick him and his followers out for being purified. That's what they said.
So, like, being good is the problem.
Yeah, like being good is the problem. That just shows you how warped their values were, you know? Purity is a bad thing.
It's a complete inversion.
Complete inversion. Yeah, it's wild.
Wow. But the lecture doesn't stop there. It goes on to say that there were, like, other sins going on, too.
Oh, yeah, plenty more. They weren't just, you know, into this one particular thing. They didn't believe in God. They didn't believe in Lot's message. The lecture actually uses this term, mutaki, amutafikat, to describe their cities, which means the overturned ones.
Overturned?
Overturned, like literally upside down. Yeah, it's a term associated with their wrongdoing. And then we get some specifics, you know. Lot accuses them of not just approaching men, but also quenoasabel, which is highway robbery, killing travelers, stealing their stuff, assaulting people, just all kinds of bad stuff. And on top of that, doing oyang al-munkar, which is like evil or reprehensible acts in their gatherings.
Evil acts in their gatherings. What does that even mean?
So there are a couple of different interpretations mentioned. Some commentators said it meant they were like shamelessly farting in public gatherings.
Really?
Yeah, and the lecture even compares that to the kind of disrespect that some non-believers show today.
Oh, wow.
But then there's also a broader interpretation where it just refers to any kind of shameful talk or behavior, anything that decent people wouldn't do.
Okay, so basically a complete lack of manners and morals.
Basically, yeah. They just didn't care.
And then there's that story about their justice system, right? That's pretty messed up.
Oh, yeah, the one where the guy who assaults someone demands compensation for throwing the stone.
Yeah, that one.
I mean, that just shows you how bad things had gotten. It's like the whole concept of justice was flipped on its head.
It's like they were living in an alternate reality.
In a way, yeah, completely twisted reality.
So with all this going on, this rampant sin and rejection of Lot's message, how does divine judgment finally come down? I mean, this is where the angels enter the scene, right?
Yeah, that's when things get really interesting. So God sends these angels to Lot, but first they stop by Abraham's place.
Okay.
And Abraham, he's a great host. He's got this roasted calf all ready for them.
Right, super hospitable.
But the angels, they don't touch the food.
No.
Yeah, and Abraham, he kind of freaks out. He realizes these aren't your average visitors.
Yeah, you get the feeling something's up.
Definitely. And that's when they reveal who they are. They're like, don't worry, we're messengers from God. And they tell him about Isaac being born soon. That's good news.
Right. That's a whole other story.
Yeah. But then Abraham's like, okay, but why are you really here? And they tell him they're on their way to deal with some criminal people. That's how they describe Lot's people. They're going to rain down these special stones marked by God, specifically for the worst offenders, the extravagant ones.
Intense.
Super intense. But then Abraham's worried. He's like, wait, what about Lot? He's in that city. And the angels, they tell him, God knows everyone in that city. Lot and his family will be saved. Except, and this is important, they say, except for his wife.
Ooh, foreshadowing much.
Big time. We'll get back to that. But first, let's see what happens when the angels get to Lot's place. He's not exactly thrilled to see them, is he?
No, not at all. I mean, imagine that. These handsome young men show up in your door.
Yeah, and remember, they're appearing as human at this point.
Right, right.
And Lot's just like panicking. He knows his people. He knows what they're capable of. And he calls it a difficult day. Like, he's really stressed out.
Yeah, understandable.
The lecture makes a point of saying that prophets, they don't know the future. They don't know the unseen.
Right, they're not omniscients.
Exactly. So Lot, he's genuinely scared. He has no clue. These are angels.
So what happens next? I'm guessing his not-so-friendly neighbors find out about the visitors.
Oh, they find out, all right. And it's actually implied that it was Lot's wife who told them, which, again, not a good look for her.
Yikes.
Yeah. And they come barging in, demanding that Lot hand over the guests. And they're like, hey, remember, we don't allow strangers here, which is so ironic considering what they want to do with these strangers.
It's like the ultimate hypocrisy.
It really is. So Lot's desperate. He's trying to reason with them. And he makes this pretty shocking offer. He offers them his daughters.
Yeah, that's the part everyone remembers.
It's a tough one to understand, right? But the lecture actually gives a few different interpretations. One is that he literally meant his daughters, as a way to, steer them away from their sinful desire.
A lawful alternative.
Yeah, a lawful alternative. And the speaker mentions that, even Prophet Muhammad allowed his daughters to marry non-believers before his prophethood.
Right, so maybe that was okay back then.
Maybe. But then the lecture also says that Lot didn't have many daughters.
So maybe not so literal?
Right. So there's another interpretation that says he was talking about the women of the whole community. Like a prophet is a father figure to his people.
Like they're all his daughters, in a way.
In a way, yeah. But then the interpretation that the lecture favors is that Lot was basically making a point, like he knew they wouldn't actually want his daughters.
Right. They weren't interested in women at all.
Exactly. So he offered them as a way to show how absurd and wrong their desires were. Kind of like that story of Solomon and the two women claiming the baby.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Like a rhetorical move.
Exactly. Yeah. A way to expose their twisted logic.
And it's in this moment of utter helplessness that Lot makes that powerful statement, right? The one about needing strength.
Oh, yeah. He says, if only I had strength against you or could find a strong support. It's like he's yearning for something, some kind of power to fight back.
Like physical strength or something.
That's one way to see it, yeah.
Yeah.
But the lecture suggests a deeper meaning, that kantohi, shadid, that strong support, refers to God.
So he's actually calling out to God for help.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, God, I need you. I can't do this alone.
It's a powerful moment, really humanizes him.
It does, yeah. He's a prophet, but he's still a man facing a terrifying situation.
So what happens next? The angels, they finally step in, right?
They do, yeah. They see what's going on. They're like, all right, enough is enough. They reveal their true nature to Lot. They say, don't worry, we're messengers. They can't hurt us.
Yeah.
And then the lecture mentions this other verse where Lot's people try to break down his door.
Oh, yeah, they get violent.
They do. And that's when Gabriel, peace be upon him, steps in. He smacks them with his wing, blinds them all.
Whoa, talk about divine intervention.
No messing around. And all those threats they made about coming back the next day, well, that's not happening now.
They're out of commission.
Totally out of commission. And that's when the angels give Lot his instructions. They tell him, get your family, leave the city tonight, and don't look back. Except, they say, except for your wife.
And that's the big question, right?
Yeah.
What's the deal with Lot's wife? Why is she the exception?
So the lecture talks about a few different interpretations. One is that she wasn't even supposed to leave at all. Like, that's how some scholars understand the verse.
Interesting.
But the more common understanding is that she did leave, but then she looked back, like she couldn't resist.
And that was it. That was her downfall.
That was it, yeah. The lecture says it shows that her heart was still with her people, with their sinful ways.
He lacked faith.
Yeah, she lacked faith in God and his judgment. It even says later on that she wasn't among the believers who were saved.
So, a tragic end for her.
Very tragic, yeah. And then, well, the main event happens, the destruction of the cities, the overturning.
How does the lecture describe that?
It's intense, man. It says the cities, the Hudafika, they were flipped upside down. Like, imagine that. The top became the bottom.
That's wild.
And then these stones start raining down. Sijil, they're called. Hard, heavy stones, each one with a person's name on it.
Like personalized destruction?
Personalized destruction, yeah. And the lecture makes a point of saying this kind of punishment, it wasn't unique to Lot's people. It happened to other wrongdoers, too.
A warning to everyone.
A universal warning, for sure. And there's this really vivid narration about Gabriel lifting the whole city up into the sky so high that people in heaven could hear the dogs barking and the roosters crowing.
Wow.
And then, boom, he flips the whole thing over.
That's some serious imagery.
It's meant to be terrifying, I think. A reminder of what happens when you reject God.
For sure. Now, before we wrap up, there's one more thing I wanted to touch on. It's about this term, let, or Leo, in Arabic.
Yeah, that's often used to describe, what Lot's people were doing.
Right, but the lecture seems to have a problem with that.
It does, yeah. The speaker, he quotes Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen, who says that using lute for that act is just plain wrong. Like, linguistically, the root of the word actually means rectification or setting things right.
So the opposite of what people use it for.
The complete opposite, yeah. And he even mentions a hadith where the prophet talks about someone, meaning he was fixing his basin as a sign of the end times. So the prophet's name actually means the rectifier.
So calling that act loot is like associating it with someone who fought against it.
Exactly. And the speaker says it's wrong on so many levels, linguistically, religiously, and even logically. Like, why would people proudly use a name associated with something so shameful?
Right. It makes no sense.
He really stresses that the correct way to refer to it is the deed of the people of Lot, not loot.
A very important distinction.
Super important, yeah. We need to be accurate and respectful when talking about these things.
Absolutely. So moving on, the lecture then talks about, well, the relevance of all this to today's world, right?
It does, yeah. The speaker draws some pretty direct parallels between what happened back then and what's happening now. He talks about how widespread homosexual behavior is in many societies.
And he even uses some statistics, right?
He does, yeah. He mentions a figure of like 600 million people worldwide who identify this way. And he also talks about the negative health consequences, like higher rates of AIDS and other diseases.
And shorter lifespans too, right?
Yeah, he says the average lifespan is 25 years shorter. He even gives some specific numbers from California about how many same-sex marriages there are and how many couples are living together.
And he frames all of this as a reversal of natural disposition.
Exactly. He's saying that this is going against the natural order of things. He even brings up the animal kingdom, how even animals, except for donkeys and pigs, they don't mate with the same gender.
Right, like it's not natural.
That's the point he's making.
And then he gets into the Islamic ruling on this, right? What does Islamic law say about all this?
So he quotes Sheikh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, who says that there's a consensus among the early scholars that the punishment for this act is death.
Wow, a serious punishment.
Yeah, very serious. Though there's some debate about how exactly it should be carried out.
Different opinions.
Different opinions, yeah. Like Abu Bakr al-Siddiq, he favored throwing the person from a high place, like lots of people were punished. Ali, he suggested burying them under a collapsing wall. And Ibn Abbas, he said stoning to death for both the active and passive partners, like with adultery.
Okay, so a range of views,
Yeah.
but all agreeing on the severity of the punishment.
Exactly. And then Ibn al-Qayyim, he actually considered the sin worse than adultery.
Wow, worse than adultery.
Yeah, because he said there's no way to make it permissible, unlike adultery, where you can repent, get married, and have lawful relations.
So, like, there's no loophole, no way to make it okay.
Nope, not in Islamic law. It's absolutely forbidden.
Okay, so a very clear stance there. So to wrap things up, the lecture ends by highlighting some key lessons from the story of Lot. What are some of the big takeaways?
Oh man, where to even begin? So, first and foremost, it emphasizes how serious the crimes of Lot's people were.
Right, not something to be taken lightly.
Definitely not. And then it talks about how dangerous it is when our inya, our natural disposition, gets corrupted.
When we start seeing evil as good.
Yeah, when right and wrong get flipped around.
And of course, the importance of patience, like Lot showed.
Oh yeah, he went through a lot, but he never gave up.
He kept calling to God.
And that's another big lesson, turning to God for help, like he did with that why you look in a shaded phrase, seeking refuge and a mighty support.
It's a reminder that we're not alone in our struggles.
Exactly. And the lecture also talks about how societies can collapse when their morals go out the window.
Yeah, like morality is the foundation.
It's the glue that holds everything together. And then there's the historical significance, how lots of people were the first to openly do this particular sin.
The first to be so open about it.
Yeah, it was a new level of depravity. But then, on a more positive note, the lecture reminds us of Lot's good qualities, his generosity, his concern for his guests.
Yeah, he stood up for them, even when it was dangerous.
He did. He was brave. And ultimately, the lecture says the good guys win, the righteous people, they get a good ending.
Happy ending.
Well, happy for Lot and his daughters, at least.
Right, because his wife, she chose a different path.
She did, and it didn't end well for her.
A reminder that even in a prophet's household, faith can be tested.
It can, yeah. It's a personal choice, ultimately.
Wow, so much to think about. This story, this lecture covers so much ground. History, societal collapse, theological debates, the relevance for today.
It does, yeah. It's like this ancient story, it's still speaking to us today.
It's raising questions about morality, about how societies function, about how we interpret these old texts.
It's challenging us to look at ourselves, to examine our own values and beliefs.
Absolutely. So, listener, I'll leave you with this. What part of this story, this lecture, resonated most with you? What questions did it raise for you? about morality, about society, about how we understand history and religion. It's a lot to process, but it's definitely worth the effort.
Definitely. These are the kinds of conversations that can really make you think and hopefully make you grow, too.
That's what we're here for. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
And until next time, keep seeking knowledge, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.
Peace.